Hello, and welcome to Wellness Wednesday with 3W. Wellness Wednesday is sponsored by 3W Medical for Women, a nonprofit medical clinic offering free of charge or low-cost reproductive health services to women in the Seattle area, regardless of income or insurance status. 3W does not profit off of the reproductive health choices women make. The information shared in this podcast is the opinion of the speaker or speakers. Medical information is not intended as individual medical consultation, but for general education only. Always consult your own health professional for personalized advice regarding medical decisions. And if you're in the Seattle area, consider making an appointment to consult with us. I'm Helen Nguyen, CEO and co-founder of 3W Medical for Women and the host of today's podcast. Hello again, Wellness Wednesday for with 3W. I don't know why I said for, but with 3W. That's how long I've been out of commission, guys. Thank you so much for continuing to listen to our podcast, continuing to tune in every week. And our lovely, lovely Alejandra has been filling my spot as host, and she's been doing such a wonderful job. But it's also really great to be back and really great to be taking over as host again for these podcasts. So thank you so much for hanging in there and allowing me to spend some time with my new son. So that's been great. We have all of our guests are really special, but today we have a very special guest named Andra. She's special in so many ways, but specifically for me, she was my first hire here at 3W. So I think her name will be familiar with you because she's in a lot of our materials, and I think some of her pictures are still part of it,
probably.
Right? But she's a mom now and all of that stuff. And so it's so wonderful to have her back here and back in the fold, back in the mission. And I asked Andra to come back for this podcast specifically because she has such a powerful story to share. And I was a little... my friendship with Andra has been always very special to me, and I was a little hesitant to ask her in the beginning because I don't know. I didn't know if it was like for everyone to hear. Mm-hmm. And then as I've seen your progression, which we'll get into a little bit more, but as I've seen you through the years grow from this story, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna ask. And you so graciously said yes. So thank you so much for
no problem
for doing this. So the topic that Andra is going to share with us today is her experience with sexual trauma, sexual assault, incest, which is something that people just don't talk about.
No,
but it happens all the time, unfortunately. So Andra, can you just go ahead and dive into your story? And again, thank you so much for sharing it. And I know that there's going to be people out there that's just it's going to really resonate with them. But when did this all start?
Yeah. Thanks, Helen. So it's kind of hard to think back all the way, but so I guess I could say my story started really when I was born because my abuser was my biological father, mm-hmm. and he did raise me also. But, it is something that happens to a lot of people, unfortunately, which is why I wanted to come do this podcast and talk about it. But mm-hmm. I did start experiencing sexual abuse from my dad around the age of 4, mm-hmm. and it just continued to progress and got more traumatic and went on until maybe about the age of 17 or 18. And at that point, I, moved out of the house and started going to college. And that's about when it ended officially. And I did have a younger sister that also experienced some abuse. I tried to shield her in a way and protect her. So I feel like, I hopefully did a little. And it was a hard experience, obviously, but it was something that I didn't really acknowledge for many, many years. I either explained it away or decided it wasn't as bad as it was, or I knew to keep it a secret. He told me to keep it a secret. And was also confusing because it was my father, and there were, no one is all evil, and there were good parts about him, and there were times when we even had a good relationship outside of that trauma, and just being raised in that environment, it was hard to understand that, someone you loved and respected could also be hurting you. He also did a very good job with keeping me very protected and almost brainwashing in a way to make me not really understand that I was different from other kids or that this wasn't happening to other kids. It was almost like this constant state of confusion in my childhood where, like it was just something we didn't talk about, but I also wasn't even completely sure it was that abnormal. And so it just kind of led to a lifelong, like, secret that just was kind of pushed aside forever. And so I went to college. I started at UW, and the abuse had ended, but it was still a secret. I still hadn't told anybody. So nobody knew. And I started attending at the University of Washington, and I made some good friends there, and I started hanging out with other families and people more than I ever had in my life because my life had been kind of isolated to my family a lot. And I kind of started noticing that maybe it wasn't normal, just that other families were different, that I just kind of started to feel like something was off with what had happened. But I still hadn't really realized it, I suppose. And I also at the time I was studying public health at UW, and simultaneously I was getting very interested in healthcare, especially women's health and women's rights, and just really wanted to help people in that capacity. So I, in college, also started volunteering with 3W before it was a thing. And so that was something that also gave me confidence and, was kind of giving me independence. And in learning about women's health, I learned about women that had gone through sexual assault and abuse and kind of started thinking, maybe this was actually what it was. And another factor was that I began to really grow in my faith at the time. I'm Catholic, and I practice my Catholic faith, and I got involved with a church group on campus. And just kind of growing closer to God in my faith helped me to realize my self-worth more and to realize what God wanted for people. And the way I was feeling and suffering with these secrets was not what he wanted the more that I got to know him. And I just was kind of, it sounds crazy because I was like 20 years old. And honestly, like, if you tell anyone about, details about what happened to me, they would, if you saw them, people would just say, well, of course that was abuse, but it's hard to explain. It's just like in my head, I didn't even realize it. Like I protected it, and
it was normalized.
It was normalized. And it was like, if I had met somebody else and they told me this was happening to me, I would have been like, well, that's terrible. Tell the police. But somehow it just, the way that trauma and abusers can mess with your mind is that it just seems different somehow. Like he would even tell me things like, well, I remember one time I was a little girl, and he maybe like 12 years old, and he told me, well, if this happened to somebody else, it might actually be abuse, but because it's happening to you, some sort of explanation for how it was different. And it's just, you're a kid and it's your parent, and that's just something I want to emphasize is that, there's a lot of people saying like, well, this happens to you for 10, 15 years. Like, why didn't you say something? And it's just like, the things that can happen, especially in a developing mind, it just, for, in a kid like that, it just can seem so distorted. You don't even realize it.
Yeah.
But so my faith, my women's health work was helping me kind of come to this realization. And then I started dating a wonderful man who I'm now married to. And that was kind of the final thing that helped me come to the truth, was that I was experiencing, I guess, human love for the first time in a way where I realized it just kind of helped it click that like this was love and that wasn't love. And also like falling in love with someone makes you want to share everything about them. And I just realized I can't move farther in this relationship without sharing what has become this like painful secret for me. And so I ended up telling him. I told him what had happened, and I, he was shocked, of course, but very supportive. And I remember he told me, like, I'm going to support you in whatever you want to do, which is whether you want to turn him in or not, like, I'm going to support you. And I kind of, once I told him, I just had this feeling where I wanted to tell a lot of people, like, I just wanted it out there, and I started wanting to like heal. And after I'd told one person, I also started feeling the trauma for the first time, which was interesting. It was like I'd buried it all, and I had all these like signs poking out and things that were hurting, and like I was struggling with depression and anxiety, but I didn't know why. And then once I started talking about what had happened, then I started having like flashbacks and nightmares, and I started acting like how you would expect a typical trauma response to act, I guess, like feeling it for the first time. And I ended up opening up to my sister, who also supported me and had also gone through some of her own things in the home. And she said, we should turn him in. So that's what we did. And it all kind of culminated very crazily, different parts of my life intersecting, because at the same time I was getting very involved in 3W, and that really helped me in the legal process, interestingly, because I was getting a lot of confidence from my work with you in the clinic and helping women, where I felt like, if I'm supporting women, I need to support myself, and that was very helpful for me to do that. So, I ended up turning him in, and we went through the whole legal system, and justice was served, and he got sent to prison. And, it was interesting because that's kind of when like the real work began. So, that happened, and it was very empowering. It was also very difficult because a lot of women started coming to me that were like acquaintances. There were just people, acquaintances of acquaintances that heard about what had happened, and they ended up coming to me and saying, thank you for doing this. Thank you for, going, like, trying to seek justice. And like, I had something similar happen to me. I heard a lot of stories like, oh, this happened with me with a family member. This happened with me with a friend. This happened with me with a coach. And, it's been 10, 20, 30 years, and I've never told anyone. And that was really shocking to me in a way, how prevalent it was to experience long-term or even short-term sexual abuse like that, and then to just keep it inside forever. So I was going through a lot of my healing, but I kind of, even at the time, thought, I really want to eventually talk about this more and make women know, like, it's not their job to hold on to their abusers' actions against them. Like, they don't need to protect them for anything, and it's really harmful to keep it inside. And like, we just need to normalize talking about it in, like, I think because that'll help reduce it happening if people aren't so scared and shameful of hiding it, feeling like it's their fault, because it's not.
Exactly.
It's not your fault.
Exactly.
Like, if anything like this has happened to you, like, it's not your fault, because that was the biggest thing that I struggled with, and I know is very common for people to feel.
Yeah. Did anyone in your life ever said it was your fault?
Well, only my abuser.
Yeah.
And that's something that you can hear. My dad would say, not that it was my fault, but would just make me feel culpable in ways like complicit. Like, the reason you had to keep it a secret was because, if you got caught, we'd both be equally in trouble or something like that. Like,
that's so manipulative, right?
It's a lot of manipulation. And I know not everyone, some sexual assaults are like full on assault. Some are, some are manipulative like that. But that's a tactic that can be used. And so I did feel like that. And then, I don't know, I think the other thing, looking back, is if you suspect something happening, it's not going to hurt anybody to inquire, except for people will be embarrassed if it's not. Because that was another thing. I also had people come to me that had known me my whole childhood and say, oh, I always wondered, or this was weird, or that was uncomfortable. I'm so sorry I didn't do anything. And it's...
Really?
A few people. And it's like, while I accept their apology and I know that it's hard to speak up, it was like, well, I wish you did something too, you know? I don't know what to say. So,
wow.
That was, So that was the history of it.
Yeah. Did you try to tell anyone when you were little?
I didn't. I really didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I just was so clear. I don't know. It just seemed so clear to keep it a secret that I really didn't tell anybody until I was, 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of after all of that had come to happen, then I started focusing on my healing, which was really the real battle I learned.
Yeah. And what did that look like? Was it counseling? Was it therapy? Was it medication?
So when I was first starting to struggle, I guess, with the trauma symptoms, I did go on an antidepressant, and I was on it until this past year. So maybe 4 or 5 years now. That really helped me just kind of sort through, I guess, whatever my brain was doing to protect itself and be able to focus on things. So I did do that. And then I initially, from the legal aid, got a lot of support in doing like STI tests and got a pelvic exam done. And I was grateful for that because it's something I hadn't even thought of. And it was good to get that done. And then they hooked me up initially with like a sexual assault guidance counselor, and I started doing some counseling for the first time. And it was great to go a couple years. I saw people and just talked to them and just worked through initial feelings, and that was, it was good to just start talking. Like there was a few years where I just wanted to talk about it and just talk and talk, I feel like. And it was, seeing a counselor was very good for that. And then I feel like I kind of hit a really hard part. It was like I went to all this counseling, I was on medication, and the, justice had been served, quote unquote. And I felt like, oh, I must be like fine now. And I got married and I got pregnant with my first son, and things were like very wonderful. And then I started feeling like it might have been the coming of my son, and just thinking about, having my own child. And I started to struggle more. I started to have a lot of like panic attacks and flashbacks and nightmares almost daily that I hadn't experienced before. And so I was just kind of working on managing that for a while. And I ended up also like stepping down from my work at 3W to focus on my mental health, because I loved working here. I did. We had so many fun times in the beginning. Helen and I were the first employees, so we would carry a printer from Starbucks to Starbucks and before we had a clinic.
Yes.
And, I loved getting it started, but I realized that, if I was trying to work for women, I needed to take care of myself.
Yes.
So
yes, that makes a lot of sense.
I went to do that, and I was struggling for a while until I found a kind of therapy called EMDR last year, which stands for, gosh, I just looked this up. It's eye movement desensitizing and reprocessing. Okay. So basically what it does is it uses bilateral stimulation, so they could do hand movements or sounds on either ear. The way my therapist does it is I hold a buzzer in each of my hands, and then you like close your eyes and just silently go into the most traumatic part of a memory, and she starts buzzing between each hand. And so it helps you process the memories on either side of your brain so that they process correctly.
That is so
it's
interesting.
Crazy. Yeah. And so basically a person that's suffering from PTSD, how she explained it, and I'm not like a psychology person, so not 100% sure, but she said people with PTSD have a lot of their trauma memories in their short-term memory, so they're always in fight or flight. So that's why like you could hear something from a trauma memory and you could like freak out because you're in fight or flight mode. Yeah. So what it does is it helps process them into your long-term memory, so you still remember them, like you can remember that was a bad thing that happened to me, but it's not ready to like jump up on you all the time. And
so it kind of like lingers there.
Yeah.
Until something triggers you, and then
that's why you can have so many nightmares and stuff like that. And so it kind of like, it like puts it in your long-term memory. So I've been doing that for the last like year and a half. There's a lot of memories to go through, so I still have some ways to go.
Sure.
But you feel almost like instant relief once you get one done. And it's
so cool.
It's just like changed my life. Like, I can't say enough for EMDR. Like, there's some controversy about it. Some people say it doesn't work. I'm just saying it works
for you.
Works for me. Because I've almost have like no flashbacks anymore, almost no nightmares. And the biggest gift it's given me is the clarity to actually think about my trauma instead of just trying to manage it.
Yeah. To move past it.
Yeah. And that's what's given me the biggest healing is that, the actual trauma and abuse acts can be so hard that you can never move past them. But like being able to, like not be focused on that so much, I was able to just think more about, why it might have happened and realize that I'm never going to understand the why. But the big thing was that I was able to, bite off and chew that it did happen, and also just let go of my anger at my dad. That's been the other biggest healing thing for me, is I've just been like, because I had a lot of anger at him. I felt like a lot of stuff was stolen from me, and just having gone through therapy and gone through this healing and praying with my faith and support from my family, I've come to a spot where I'm saying like, I'm not mad at him anymore because it doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
I want him to be able to accept that he did it, because he hasn't. He's still denies it.
He's still denying it?
He's still denying it.
Okay.
So that's been like the point where I want that for him, not for myself, but for him. Like I want him to come to peace. I want him to
own up to it
and also just become a better person. Because I feel like it's like some people, I've heard a lot of, like when a lot of people have, heard what happened or hear about abusers in general, they'll be like, oh, throw away the key. I hope he gets killed or raped in prison or suffers forever. And to me, that didn't make me feel better, because I don't know, like if you go through so much hurt, it's easy to just want more hurt for people, but that's not going to make the world better or anyone feel better.
Yeah.
And so that's been the most healing thing for me, is that I don't want him to get hurt. I want him to find peace and somehow become a good person in there. And that would be what brings me the most peace. So that's what I pray for.
Yeah.
And doing therapy and everything that I talked about is what kind of got me to that conclusion. And that's just like mellowed me out.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've been talking so much.
No, thank you for just laying it out there for people. Because like you said, there's so many people that came up to you after you shared their story and said, I've been through the same thing. I've had someone in my life that's gone through the same thing. It is way more prevalent than we think.
Unfortunately, it is.
Yeah. And you shouldn't have to go through it alone. You shouldn't have to unpack it on your own.
Right.
And there is healing. There is hope.
There is. I think there is. It's a devastating thing, obviously, and it's something that can really break you, and it's something that I'll always carry. But I think it's easy to feel like there's no recovery from it. And I want people to know that there is. Like, you can have a completely full and happy life, and you don't have to go around telling your story. Like, some people want to be more private about it, and that's fine. But
sure,
I think the most important thing is, to acknowledge that it happened to yourself, and, just seek whatever your healing looks like for you. Like, it needs to be acknowledged. It needs to be called out as not being okay. And there shouldn't be any, like, women should know that the twists and explanations that their abusers are giving them are just manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's, I think, the most important thing.
Brainwashing.
It is.
And you had to deal with that at such a young age.
Yeah. And a lot of people have to, and it's hard to undo that, but you can.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
living proof of it.
Honestly happy, like, now. Like, I, even like 4 years ago, wouldn't have thought I could ever be happy. And I am. Like, I'm married and I have a baby, and, well, actually he's 2. And I'm going to have another baby in the fall, and I'm going to have 2 sons. And that's given me the most meaning out of anything, where I realize that, you know, life is hard, but I can give these 2 boys an innocent childhood that I didn't have, and I can have healing through that too. Like, I can raise these sons to experience just innocent childhood bliss, and then when they grow to be men, I can teach them, you know, to respect people. People always talk about raising your boys to respect women, you know, and to not be abusers, but on the same end, to own their worth and their body's worth, and to not accept anybody hurting them either. And that's an amazing challenge to be given. It's like, I felt so failed by my father, but, you know, you don't have to just be failed and then be done. You can make the cycle better with your generation.
Yeah. Do you think that do you think that you're going to share your story with your kids, and when do you think that's going to be? Or
that's something that my husband and I have talked about for sure, and are not entirely decided. I am decided that I will definitely share my story with them, but I don't know
when, how,
or when, and it'll probably depend on the individual child. And I'm sure they will ask at some point about, I don't know, where that grandfather is, or if they, unfortunately in this world, you know, they will encounter hearing things about abuse or assault in their life. And, you know, I'm kind of just praying that when the time for it comes, I will know, and it'll come up, and I will share it with them. And probably sometime when they're like young teenagers, I'm thinking, and can handle it more. But I definitely want to approach it with them as like not a tragedy, but a, you know, something that happened, but this is like what grew out of it. Like,
they grew out of it.
Yeah. And I think that's an important thing. Like, when things happen like this, it's not, the end point is not the tragedy and the pity and everybody dies and is sad. It's like amazing things come out of terrible things.
Yeah. And I think some folks out there might be thinking like, I get to see this firsthand. I got to see, you know, like, you have a family now, and you have like such a healthy relationship with people in your life now. And I think some people might think like, how are you able to like have kids, you know, and like trust another man and all of that stuff. And what would your response be to, because I would think like, I wouldn't want anyone to touch me anymore.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trust men anymore, or something like that.
Yeah.
What did you, you know, you said you shared your story with your now spouse, and was he an example of like what men should be like, and that's helped you kind of like get over that hump? Or
I think it's important to acknowledge, you know, everyone's experiences are different, and there's definitely some women that maybe wouldn't, you know, feel comfortable having an intimate relationship even ever afterwards, and I think that's perfectly fine. And for me, I don't know, it's a little hard to explain, but my husband was my first serious relationship I'd ever been in, and it was just such a contrast, I guess, because he's just such an amazing person and just so selfless and loving. And the number one thing is that he never, you know, took advantage of me or has never belittled me in any way. So it was just so much respect from him, our whole relationship, that I was able to, I guess, separate it fully. Like, there was such disrespect from the abuse I suffered with my dad, that seeing the complete opposite of respect in my boyfriend and then fiance and husband just made me really able to be like, that wasn't love and this is love. And I was able to separate that when our relationship became like physical and sexual, that was how it was supposed to be. And even though perhaps some of the physical acts were like similar in nature, they just felt different because like the love was there. And I think that's true even like outside of abuse, like just in general, like your sexual relationships, it's like, if you could be feeling used if it's just someone using it for physical pleasure for each other, or it can be coming out of love. And I think that was just the difference is, the love was healing.
Yeah, that's such a great thing that you just brought up, because I think as women, no matter what you say, as women, we approach sex and intimacy different than men. There is a difference, and that difference is good. And we know when it feels a certain way, and we know when it feels not a certain way.
Yeah.
And I just, I think we just need to own it. I think a lot of us, a lot of people out there, it's like, oh, it's just sex. No, it's not.
You deserve respect and love, and like that's.
Yes.
You don't have to go through a trauma to deserve it. You deserve it no matter what.
Yeah. In any sexual experience.
Yes.
If it's mutual and approached in a way that is loving and honoring of the other person, it feels different.
Yeah.
And we know it. Our gut tells us.
Yeah.
What if someone's going through this right now out there? What do you want to say to them?
I would want to say to them that they're not alone, first of all, and that people will believe them. I think that was a big thing for me. My father was very respected in the community, and there were a lot of people that would tell me how, we seem to have a perfect family, or I was so lucky to have such a good father. And it's easy to feel like as a little girl that, well, then nobody would believe me if I said he was doing something wrong. And it's just not true. Like people will believe you when you tell the truth. Like the truth will be heard. And also that like it's going to be okay. I was talking to a priest about this a couple of years ago. I went for, I was going to mental health counseling, but I also would sometimes go talk to a priest for spiritual guidance as well, because there's just so many facets to work through when you're processing trauma. And he told me, because I told him I was feeling a big disconnect from the little girl that had been abused and who I was now, and I didn't feel like it was the same person. And I didn't know how to heal her. And he told me to just reach out to her in my mind and hold her hand and show her who I was today. And like, it's hard to see, and when you're suffering through it, but it's like, I just want them to know that like they can still, be their own person. Like who they are today doesn't have to be who they're always going to be. Yeah.
That there's hope, that there's change, that there's healing.
Yeah. And having things happen to you they aren't qualities of who you are. Like you're strong and you can get through it.
Especially if it was done to you.
Exactly.
You did not ask for it.
Yeah. Things that other people have done to you are their sins, not yours. Like they are their faults, and you don't need to carry that. Yeah.
Do you feel that the justice system, all of the trial and all of that stuff, like, do you feel like that was helpful in reaching some sort of healing as well?
Yes, but not as much as perhaps someone would think.
Okay.
I don't want that to be misinterpreted. I really think that when people can, they should pursue justice. And I think that it happens far less often, than it should. The fact that I was able to have my crimes brought to trial, prosecuted, and, imprisoned is really amazing because it doesn't happen a lot. And so I think that every woman should at least see if they can pursue it, if that's what they want to do. But I think it's important to know that that's
like one piece.
Yeah, it's like a physical healing. Often abusers are a danger, and it's great to get them, so they can't abuse other people.
Put away.
Yeah, put away. And I think that there's a lot of hate put on the legal system a lot of times, but the people I met were amazing. They wanted to help people. Like the attorney I worked with was the most compassionate man I've ever met. And so they're trying to help, they're doing their best, but getting someone sentenced to 20 years is not going to heal you. I think that's just an important thing to hear is it's good to do.
Maybe
it should be done. It's a start, but I don't know. I guess just don't put all your hope in that. If I just get them to go to prison, I'll be fine. I don't know. Because that was kind of when my work on myself started. It was I wanted to be protective of, other people so he couldn't hurt them. But then I needed to focus on myself. I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you want for your future as you continue to heal and make progress? Where is there some sort of goal that you're aiming for of where you're finally I'm just completely free and I don't have to talk about it anymore? Is that something or I don't know,
Yeah, I wouldn't say I have a specific goal, but I think, everyone will have their own way of either handling their trauma, and some people might want to handle it for themselves and then just go about their life. And for me, I do feel a call to share my story in some ways, like I'm doing now, but I feel, I don't know what the end goal is, but as I've kind of gotten to, it's really very recent that I feel like I'm in a very healthy place. I've been feeling more I feel like I somehow want to find a way to bring awareness to it and try and reduce, sexual assault and especially familial sexual abuse. But I don't have a goal. I'm just kind of going where the spirit leads me, I guess. So yeah. But in terms of healing goals, I don't have expectations for myself because I know there will always be hard times. And
sure.
I guess the only thing is I just want to be cautious. I know sometimes I might be doing worse than I'm doing now, and that's fine. And that's
part of the process.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that's important. That's my only goal, is to not get discouraged if I, have a bad month or even a bad year. I just have to remember I'm still myself and I can keep working. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
No problem.
For sharing your story. It's I've known you for quite a long time now.
I don't even know how long.
I know. I feel like it's been forever, but which is great. But hearing it just, it never gets easy hearing it. We're sitting in one of the exam rooms because we will get a podcast studio one of these days. That's another podcast I'll talk about in another episode. But we're sitting in one of our exam rooms and there's a little framed saying and it says, "Life is tough, my darling, but so are you." And that's what I think about you.
Oh, thanks, Helen. Well, I think you're tough too.
Thank you. In an annoying way, not a sweet way like you, but I'll take it. But thank you so much for, again, just telling your story, putting yourself out there. And I know there's going to be so many people that are going to benefit from hearing this. And I hope that they know that they can come to 3W and talk about this with our medical providers and know that we would believe them.
Yes.
And that they would be supported and loved. And, we want to be a part of your healing journey, whatever part that is. And that we we have connections in the community. We have someone like Andra, who you can, I don't know, maybe down the road, connect with her or something like that. I'm sure you'll be open to that.
Yeah. And 3W, like everyone that works here is so compassionate and amazing.
Yeah.
Like honestly, yeah, I would have loved to have support at a place like this. And I did, in a way through working here. And yeah, I think it's great what you guys are doing. And, I've been out of the 3W scene the last couple of years, and I'm recently kind of coming back and kind of just feeling called to like do more work with you guys again. So I would love to do stuff in this vein of work with you guys.
Yeah. It's women's health, right? It's women's physical health. It's mental health. It's about healing. It's about reaching some sort of conclusion or whatever it is for you in this moment of your life, that we'd be honored to walk alongside you and partner with you with whatever it is that you want to do. So we're just going to have to.
I'm excited to find out what it is. We'll just have to see.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Andra. And I know this won't be a one-off episode. So I already am thinking of different episodes to have Andra kind of contribute to. Please stay tuned and share this episode with your community. If you know of someone that's going through this, if you kind of think something like this is going on with someone that you know, maybe send them this podcast and it could start a conversation. Maybe that's a little bit easier.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Like I said, the more we talk about it, the more the, perpetrators can't have that hold on us anymore.
Yeah. They don't have, their power over you isn't real.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for listening. And till the next time, till the next episode.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. For more information about 3W, please visit our website at 3wmedical.org. That's the number 3, the letter W, medical.org. From there, you can learn more information about the services we provide, book an appointment, or make a donation if you'd like to support our mission. You can also call our office at 206-588-0311. That's 206-588-0311. If you like this episode, please share it with others and consider subscribing on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, stay healthy and be well.